Good day everybody. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about our drag settings on our reel. More specifically when we're doing rock and surf fishing and spinning with our braid and grinder setups. It's a question that's come up on the forums. I presume it's new anglers out there that sort of just want to know how to set the drag, how tight, how loose. And actually thinking about it, it's something we as experienced anglers do naturally. We don't even think about it. We set our drag, we go fish. But I think if you're new in the game and just started fishing, it's actually something to think about when you go fishing as to how to set the drag and at what strength you should set your drag. Alright, so I thought about it a bit, and the reasons we set our drags is obviously the main reason is when you hook a fish to have the resistance from your reel to pull the fish towards you. But I think there's a few other reasons as well where the drag plays a role that we need to discuss. So I'm going to start with the casting. With us casting with a bionic finger, or some guys still cast with their fingers, it's very, very important to set your drag correctly when you're casting. So if your drag is going to be too loose and you're going to cast, you're going to get slippage when you put power into your cast. It's going to slip, and obviously you're going to lose distance, and if you're fishing or casting with your finger, you might even cut your finger on the braid. So a lot of professional anglers would lock their drag before they go cast, especially if you're going to cast a very big heavy bait and you're going to put a lot of force into the cast, and to prevent that slip you lock the drag before you go cast, and then after they've casted they'll come back and set the drag. So I think the first important purpose of this drag is for casting purposes. So the safest way is to have a nice tight drag when you go cast. Make sure there's no slipping on the bionic finger or on your finger itself. When it comes to casting with a lure and a spinning setup, it changes a bit, because obviously you can't set your drag, cast, and then reset it after you cast it. So that's where it becomes very important to set your drag correctly. And I think sort of the easiest way to explain it when it comes to spinning is to set your drag so it doesn't slip on your finger. But then you've got to go to the second step and think about what you're targeting when you're fishing. So that is the second part of it, setting your drag correct for the fish you're targeting. Alright, so another thing to consider when you're setting your drag or thinking about your drag when you're fishing is, what gear am I using? So obviously if you've got 200-pound leader like this, I can literally set this drag as tight as I want and pull as hard as I want. Nothing much is going to break. But if you're fishing with your light, say for instance super light 10-pound gear, you've got to match your tackle. So it comes back to balance. We always talk about tackle balance. Your rod, your reel, your braid, and your leader has got to be in balance. So should your drag be in balance with the diameter or the strength of your braid or nylon. So it's quite a simple thing. If you're fishing with 10-pound braid, you're not going to go set your drag at 12 or 15 pounds. You want to come down to about 8 pounds. So it's not an exact science, but you should know that a 10-pound braid will mostly break at 12 to 15 pound if you want to break it. So I would try and set my drag on 10-pound roughly about 8 to 10 pounds to make sure that if there's a sudden bite, a fish pulling away quickly, I just don't part my braid and lose the fish. So yeah, just a few things to consider. Eventually the more you fish, the more you'll know exactly what suits you, because people are different. Some guys are very strong and they can really handle a very, very strong, solid drag on the heavy tackle. You also don't want to pull yourself off a rock or into the ocean, so be logical about it and how you set your drag. But as you fish more, you will realize that this is the way I set my drag. Before I cast, get the drag right. When I hook a fish, I can concentrate on fighting the fish and I don't have to worry about my drag while I'm fighting the fish. Something that's very important when we're talking about drag is to make sure your drag is always serviced. So you can set your drag perfectly, but if your drag washes on service and you haven't got a nice smooth drag, it's going to influence your drag all the time, and you end up losing fish like that. So ensure that your drag is smooth. If it's not that smooth, send it in for service. It's a quick fix. The guys will get it nice and smooth again, and it goes a long way to have a nice smooth steady drag when you're fighting a fish. Alright, something we often do as especially when we're fishing for our bigger fish, that when the fish takes off and our drag is set for some reason not too tight. Say for instance you're fishing relatively light and you don't want to lock your drag. The little tip is to, especially when you're fishing with a circle hook where you're not striking, the fish takes you down, and you just want to put enough pressure on that fish to set the hook. And if you're concerned your drag is a little bit loose for some reason, you're either fishing light or you don't want a very tight drag, just put your hand on the spool and grab it for that second that the fish goes down, until you can feel there's enough pressure on the fish for the hook to have gone in, especially the circle hook, get it in the corner of the mouth, and then you can let go. Don't have to worry about drag anymore. It's set correctly and the fish can take line. So it's something I often do when I try and set the hook on a fish, is just to hold the spool while the fish is going down with me, and as soon as I can feel the hook is set, I will let go and let the drag do its job. The purpose of the drag is to enable your braid or your line to come off the reel smoothly while you're fighting a fish. So I use my drag a lot. I'm not a big fan of locking the drag. I'd rather have the drag doing its job, and then I will fight the fish and get it out after the fish is nice and tired and in the right zone.